I said, gee, I really don't know. I never heard any, but I'll look into it. So I looked into it and I found something very interesting to share with you today. Uh, and I'll get into the specifics of it in a bit. But first, just a little bit about Beethoven, because what can one say in a minute or two about Beethoven when at conservatory you could take a year-long course in Beethoven and still only scratch the surface, so to speak. But he really was one of the titans of Western music. It's always a little bit. I always hesitate to talk about the best this and the best that, but he really is attributed to bringing music out of the classical period and into the romantic period over the span of his not so long life. He was born in 1770 and he died in 1827. So what mathematically, that's what, 50, he was only 57 when he
Right.
died. Um, uh, Most people know him for the really big, the big works, the War Horses, the Fifth Symphony, the Moonlight Sonata, et cetera, et cetera. He did actually write a lot of choral music and vocal music, although it's not quite as well known, I think, for the sort of the casual listener as his symphonies and his chamber music. Um, his life and his compositional outlook are usually split into three distinct periods. So he had an early period which lasted roughly until 1802, and then the middle period where he got a little bit more experimental and ventured outside of the realm of the strictly classical formats, was roughly 1802 to 1812. And then his late period was from 1812 until his death. And in the late period, by that point, he was pretty much completely deaf. I don't know if you all know that he did lose his hearing. Um, and the works from the late period are very, very, many of them are very inner works. And uh, most musicologists attribute that to his deafness. Like he had his own sound world inside his head that was for him very, pure music. And some of it is quite extraordinary. Some of the late piano sonatas, the late string quartets. I'm sure Adria, you've probably played a bunch of those, and you know what incredible works they are. Um, he wrote, as I said, a lot of vocal music, but he only wrote one opera, that's Fidelio, and many, many songs. Um, and what I'm focusing on today is one of these songs, which is the connection to the Psalms. So, what is it? It's a work, and forgive me, I'm not a German speaker, so I'll probably really botch this pronunciation, but it's Die Himmelruhen des ewigen Ehre, which is the heavens praise the glory of the eternal. And it's the fourth song in a set of six songs that are all settings of poetry. And interestingly, they're all religious. They all have religious themes, these six poems. And the poems were written by someone called named Christian Gellert, Gellert. And so the songs are known as Beethoven's Gellert Lieder. Interestingly, Beethoven was not the first composer to set some of these poems to music. C.P.E. Bach, who was one of Bach's many, 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 many children. I think he had 20 children, but not all of them survived from two marriages. C.P.E. Bach was the second surviving son of J.S. Bach, and he composed a version of this song for voice and continuo in 1758. So he actually came first. And Harold, maybe now you could put up the Psalm 19. Yeah. So the song and the poem that that Gellert wrote is a paraphrase of Psalm 19, which we haven't gotten to yet. Beethoven only used 2 verses of Gellert's poem, and I don't know if we want to read this out loud or just eyeball it, but
well, Ira, why don't, if I could just read through it quickly, because it's only the first 6 verses.
Sure, go right ahead.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The sky proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day makes utterance. Night to night speaks out. There is no utterance. There are no words whose sound goes unheard. Their voice carries through the earth, their words to the end of the world. He placed in them a tent for the sun, who is like a groom coming forth from the chamber, like a hero eager to run his course. The psalm has 14 verses, and all of you can take a look, but these are the from 2 to 6 are the verses that Gellert said.
Great. Thank you, Harold. And now if you could put up the other document of the text with the German and the translation. So this is the poem.
Are you seeing this, Ira? Is this okay? Or no?
I'm seeing it, yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
So I, as I said, I'm not a German speaker. I wonder if there's anybody in class who might want to read this for us.
If there is,
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Naomi Hirsch. I am.
Go ahead, Naomi.
Die Himmel rühmen des ewigen Ehre. Ihr Schall pflanzt seinen Namen fort. Ihn rühmt der Erdkreis, ihn preisen die Meere. Vernimm, o Mensch, ihr göttlich Wort. Wer trägt der Himmel unzählbare Sterne? Wer führt die Sonne aus ihrem Zelt? Sie kommt und leuchtet und lacht uns von ferne und läuft den Weg gleich als ein Held.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Wonderful.
And I'll read the English. Heaven praises the glory of eternity. Its roar proclaims his name. The earth praises him. The seas praise him. Listen, O man, to their divine words. Who supports the uncountable stars of heaven? Who guides the sun from its canopy? It comes and shines and laughs at us from afar and runs its course like a hero. So I think you can see the connection between this poem and Psalm 19. So
shall we go to the music?
Yeah, I mean, don't start playing it yet. I just want to talk a little bit more about the song.
Okay, because we're a little, we have time to play it, but we do need to get to our breakout.
Oh, okay, all right. So very, very quickly. So this was originally written as a solo for a soloist, a vocalist, but it actually became a little bit more well-known in some of the other settings. There are a number of choral settings, and we'll hear one on the play out. And there's also a setting in English by Virgil Thompson, the American composer. Okay, I won't go on if we're running out of time. And we're going to hear to play in the solo version sung by Jessie Norman, a great American soprano who passed away some years ago, and she's accompanied here by James Levine.
Ira, thank you so much. As you always do, I'm sure you'll be putting these pieces and notes in the Facebook page, and we'll be
Yes.
playing out. So if I could, let's all thank Ira for that wonderful few moments of scholarship and that beautiful music. Thank you. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to be in Chevruta again. The rabbi has asked that we study the Fisher translation of Psalm 14. I have sent it to everyone several times, once even with the correct attribution. And we're going to go into groups of 3, and I'm going to give you this prompt. Spend a minute or so introducing yourself to the other people in your group if you do not know them yet. And then you should all have, I also sent the basic Hebrew English version. Before you look at Fisher, go around and say, what are your questions about this psalm, or what do you think is unclear? It can be the translation of one word, it can be who is speaking, it can be whether that last verse is actually part of the psalm, it can be what the superscription means. Before you look at Fisher, and decide what 2 or 3 questions you have about the psalm, and then look at Fisher and see if reading Fisher helps you answer those questions, how Fisher answers those questions, and whether you agree with how Fisher is answering those questions. So it's a minute or 2 of introduction. It's taking a quick look at the psalm in Hebrew and Hebrew English, or even just going back to your reading. What are the questions you have? Then read through the Fisher and see how Fisher addresses those questions. Behind the scenes, would my wizard like to break us down now, and perhaps pause the recording while we will be spending, since it's now 10:15, we'll spend 25 minutes broken out, and then we will come back. Yes.
I'm on for tomorrow morning, right? Or am I not?
You know what, Adria? Let's wait until the end and we can work this out. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just need to know.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we will make sure you do. So here's what we're going to do for a couple of minutes. We're going to do really quick pop-ups with people putting their hands up in participants. It's like 10 seconds, one thing that you saw reading Fisher this time around. And I'm going to start and say that where the Hebrew uses the third person to talk about the Lord, Fisher uses the second person to talk about you. Yael, you have your hand up.
We talked about how Fisher is much more compassionate in his translation than the original Hebrew. We're all kind of fumbling, so it's not about bad people, it's about people who don't know or don't understand. And I brought up my own experience with my mom who survived the Holocaust, who said there is no God. So it's not necessarily the Naval, it's not the bad person who says there's no God. It's the person who might have experienced trauma.
Wow, so more compassionate. Okay. Sherry Dratfield.
Yes, our questions had to do with who's speaking and when. Is everyone evil, one good person, or is there no one good person? Contradiction that there's some who seem to be good, and who might that be? And we arrived, our conclusion, I think, between the 3 of us, Eleanor, Debbie, Metric, and Simon and me, 4 of us, was that maybe the psalmist is one of the poor and lowly, and he's not saying that, or she, or they are not saying that no one's good, not even me, but as part of the poor and lowly, God is going to help the strugglers come up, because that everyone else are benighted, poor, willful, ignorant, pitiful people, and there's a lot of anger towards them. So as part of the lowly.
Wow. Okay, I see Saul, and I would like some more report outs from some of the other groups. It doesn't have to be genius. It doesn't have to be a huge aha, just one of the questions that you dealt with and how you handled it. So Saul.
So we liked how Fisher dealt with the line that says, you shame the poor man's counsel and Hashem is his refuge. In the Fisher describes how God is with the poor and the lowly, but burning out from amidst them, and that how sometimes we forget when we pass the poor and the lonely sitting in their boxes and in the street, that God is with them. God
Wow.
is with them.
Okay. Again, all right, so Lori Spear.
Okay, so a couple of things. In Fisher, he uses eyes and seeing and blind in verses 2 and 3. It's not in the Hebrew at all, but he does it. Also, we notice that in verses 5, in both Fisher and Safaria, they use the word circle, and Fisher uses the word circle and center. Again, it's not in the Hebrew.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna, just so that we go through a few more people noticing the time, those are some terrific insights. We noticed the seeing also.
Can I add one more?
You know what, I'm gonna go to a few
All right,
more.
I'll wait,
people.
I'll wait.
Okay, Dorina, one insight from your group?
We noticed how universal Fisher has made the sound. The only specifically Jewish reference is Zion.
Wonderful, okay. Judy Frank, one learning from your group? Judy Frank?
We disagreed with the fact there was not one good person. We felt they were always good people in every circumstance. So.
Okay, Lisa Brown, one insight from your group?
I was curious as to why the witless should remember God. I mean, what was the reason? And then he answers that here by saying, because when they see God's goodness. So to me, this sounded like Ha'olam Haba, otherwise known as pie in the sky. So I actually had a problem with this psalm.
Okay, so we want to get to the play out. For those of you who can stay, it is beautiful. I know that there are more insights. I'm sorry I can't get to everybody. I think let's just see who enjoyed doing this, breaking out into groups and I think it really worked nicely. So Ira, if you would like to introduce our play out, please.
Yes, very briefly. So we're going to hear the same song that we heard before, only this is in a choral setting for full chorus, organ, and choir, made by Joseph Donatello. So let's listen.
Okay, here we go. Thank you all, and Ira in particular for that. And I guess if Ira and Adria, who is doing, I will say goodbye to everybody. You can stay if you'd like. But I guess the question is Adria still on? Adria, who will be doing play in and play out tomorrow?
I thought we had agreed with Adria that you would do it.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well, but
Okay,
is that all right?
That's perfect. Thank you. And I know I'm going to go back and listen to at least the Jesse Norman again. It was beautiful. And Ira, thank you. This was really a masterpiece of scholarship today.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I do want to say that I do not think this is representative of Beethoven's finest compositions, but it certainly is an interesting one, and the only one that I was able to find that had anything to do with the Psalms.
Oh, but you did it. Thank you so much to celebrate Beethoven's 250th birthday. All right, everybody, see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be back to translations. There is no class on Thursday. And then next week we will start with, next week, Monday and Tuesday, we'll be doing offerings. And then Wednesday we'll start with Psalm 15. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, Harold.
Harold, will you put the music we heard today, or will